This is Worldwide Flavor Network. Coast to coast and worldwide.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on the broadcast of Worldwide Flavor Network are solely those of the individuals involved and does not represent those of Worldwide Flavor Network and Live 365. Worldwide Flavor Network is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy of the information contained on any live or recorded broadcast available for listening on the site.
It's your girl, A. Michelle. Join us on Sundays from 10 until 12 noon for the Baltimore Flavor Gospel Show on Worldwide Flavor Network.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Shell, also known as Color Beauty. Join me on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. on WWFN Online Radio. When 2 minutes is not enough, we go into overtime. See you then.
Tune in with Diva Talk, Real Talk with Diva May every Sunday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Worldwide Flavor Network. Please share.
Join Salute Culture on August the 11th at 6 p.m. for Rock the Runway at the Hotel RL Baltimore. This is a free event. Please register on Eventbrite. Rock the Runway fashion show presentation.
Hey, you guys, this is Anika from Anika Tells All.
Tune in every Thursday from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Worldwide Flavor Network. See you then.
You've tuned in to the Friday Night Live Show with your boy, Deron Big Status Peaks.
Your girl, Val Jenkins.
And Shut Up Shannon, the voice of the people.
Where community meets awareness, struggle meets breakthrough, and entertainment meets education.
On the Worldwide Flavor Network.
Every single Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Baby.
Yes.
This show is being sponsored by Worldwide Flavor Network. If you are looking to have your own radio show, come and join us here on WWFN Online Radio. Contact us via our website, www.flavornetwork.com.
Yes. Oh, it's a beautiful day.
I ain't never had a love like the love you giving, no. And you made every day of my life worth living. Yeah. I've been up, I've been down, I've been here, I've been there, but I ain't never been nowhere like this. You exceeded your mission and got my attention the first time I kissed your lips. Oh, now that you're right here by my side, every day's like paradise. Hey, I'm so in love. Baby, you so sexy, you so fly. I'm gonna be here by your side. Hey, and I'm gonna tell the world, baby, yeah. Girl, I love you so. Never, ever, ever gonna let you go. Your love so official. You're just what I've waited for. Just what I've been praying for. Yeah. Everything that your love so official. Yeah. I just wanna let you know, yeah. Now I ain't never had a love affair like this before. Send shivers down my spine. You're always on my mind. And I don't think that I could ever be without your love. Girl, don't you know we go together like a hand in glove? And all the best in me. Oh, baby, now I see that it's you and it's me, and that's how it's supposed to be, oh baby. I love you so. Your love so official. Your love so official, girl. Just what I've been praying for. What I've been praying for. I need more. Your love so official. Girl, I love you.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's your girl, A. Michelle, here on the Hot Topics Live. Oh, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone has had a wonderful day today. It's been beautiful outside in spite of all the little thunderstorms we've had off and on all day today, but it's been a truly a great day. I am so elated to have in the studios with me two wonderful gentlemen that I've grown to know. One I grew up with, one I've acquired over the last few months or so that has grown like we've been friends forever, and it's just been great, truly a great pleasure to have become friends with him. And of course, growing up with my dear darling Garland. And so it's just been so great today, guys, knowing that you could come on here and share, because both of you are such great men in what you do, but also you're so knowledgeable of the things that are outside of what you do, but they still intertwine in what you do as well. Neither one of you are politicians, but you know a lot about the politic world and how it flows and how it works. And I respect that about you, because in conversation and then just reading things that Garland writes is just like mind blowing. And this week, that was what prompted me to say, Garland, I need you to be on here this week. And so what he posted was just like, yes, that's what I needed, because I actually was saying what you wrote and saying, okay, do people really know what politicians' roles are, you know, after what was said? And so before we get into that, I want everyone to put on your calendar for Saturday from 6 until 7 o'clock. We are doing Hands Across Baltimore to help us stop the shooting. It's going to be my corner, and I need y'all to support my corner. No, but I need you to support it, period. My corner is North Avenue in Milton. So please join us on North Avenue in Milton on Saturday for just 1 hour. We're coming together to unify our city. And this was happening long before all of what's been being said and what's going on. This was already in motion. It just really helped us get on the map some more. That's all, gave us some free publicity. So that just really has helped us a lot. But I really honestly want you to come out. We want to come out in strong numbers to unify and pray. It was just wonderful how they came together and brought a Jewish, a Muslim, a Christian, all of them together to create a prayer that would unify us all together. And so I'm looking forward to Saturday. I don't care if it's raining or not. Please still come out and let's support this. We want to take our city back to the place where people aren't talking about just the shootings here, where we are talking about, because there's so many good things going on. We have so many wonderful things happening here in Baltimore that no one really talks about, or they're missing out on because we're overshadowing them with all of the crime that's going on right now. And we know that can change. We know prayer can change things, but we know overall, as long as we continue to work together, things will change. So back to the two gentlemen I have here. I have Sergeant Clyde Boatwright, who is in the Baltimore City Police Department with the school system. And then I have Garland Thomas, who is a social worker, right, Garland?
I used to be, but now I work for the state.
Okay. Okay. You introduce yourself. I thought it was, I didn't know that
everything
changed.
and nothing.
And so we're just gonna have some fun, but we're gonna also talk serious as well, because both of you guys are funny guys, so I know we'll have plenty of fun. But let's start with the whole piece of where our president, of course, it was prompted by someone else who gave him some ammunition, who wrote something. And so our president of these United States has made some comments that were just not pleasing to our community. Tell me, guys, what was your thoughts when you first heard, doesn't matter who wants to start, when you first heard those comments, because both of you being the men that you are, I know you had something running through your head when he made those comments.
Okay, I'll start first. Thank you for the invitation. It's fantastic. It's great to be here. I know when I first heard the comments, I mean, when Donald Trump makes comments like that, usually they're made as a distraction. He's just a distraction Twitterer. And, he puts out these broad, explosive statements to really just blow stuff up. And so when I initially saw the statement, I was kind of like, okay, this is not unusual. And I know it's a dedicated attack more so on Elijah Cummings than it is on Baltimore. And so as these type of things, it's one for distraction, is to get people kind of focus off a particular subject and onto something else. Particular subject that he's dealing with right now is immigration and people coming across the border. And Elijah Cummings is linked to that issue in terms of his position as a congressman. And so, I just, I knew it was dumb. And I knew that it was something that kind of was supposed to be inflammatory, and it did just what it was supposed to do. It got everyone talking. It got people distracted. You have people out here fighting. Baltimore's not this, Baltimore's not that. And, as an end result, other things are happening that we're not necessarily paying attention to.
Well, again, good evening, and thank you for having me. I initially read the comments early in the morning, and I thought, wow, I'm offended.
Okay.
However, I started to think, and I said, was it a lie?
Right.
Did he lie? If someone offends me, I have to, as to be responsible, I have to take the emotion out of it, and then realize what point were they trying to make. So then I started to question and look back and say, what meaningful things have been done over the last few years to hold elected officials accountable. As you know, in my world, in law enforcement, there's a big public outcry of holding police accountable for everything. Let's hold the police accountable for everything. And so as the elected officials, they're in positions similar to us, where the wind blows the coldest at the top of the mountain. So if you're in a position of public trust, which police are, and also elected officials, then you should be held to a higher standard. And coming from the 7th Congressional District is where I spent 22 years of my life.
Okay.
I thought back to how I had a registered nurse that lived next door. And on the other side of my house, I had a business owner, a small business owner. And across the street, I had, a Baltimore City firefighter and an MTA bus driver. And I started thinking about all of these different people that I saw growing up that were professional people that brought homes in Baltimore, that were raising their families in Baltimore. And now that same street that I grew up on and I ride by, there's 7 or 8 vacant houses.
Wow.
And this was and all of the people that own those houses are still alive. So where did everyone go? And why did they leave?
Wow. So those vacant houses, were those rental properties?
No, these people purchased and owned their homes. So why is there a mass exodus out of the city of Baltimore? And then I looked at it. There's people hanging out on the same streets and on that same block. And when you go 2 blocks north, like, it's historic. I mean, you go 2 blocks north of the street that I grew up, there's still cobblestone on the street. So it's a historic neighborhood. So why do we have people running from historic neighborhoods? And, I just like a lot of things built up in me, and I was just wondering, did this guy lie, or is this now sparking the interest of those to say, now let's look around and see what we're getting. Let's look at what's the bigger picture here?
Okay.
I would definitely say Trump lied. I think it's a lie in the sense that if we understand the history of how our neighborhoods got this way, I grew up in the 7th district as well. I mean, these things just didn't happen 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Probably around the 1960s, Baltimore had almost 1 million residents, about 950,000. it has lost over half of that population since then. So Baltimore is now down to about 425, maybe to 475 residents total. And so that's where those residents left. And in addition to those residents leaving, and that leaves a housing stock that's built for 1 million people, now we have neighborhoods that are pretty hollowed out because we've just had people leave, may it be going to the suburbs, white flight, the loss of industry. I was just looking today before I came here. Baltimore City does not have a Fortune 500 company located in the city limits. And so all of the commerce left as well. County moved to different locations, and people following industry, following their jobs, following better opportunity, following better schools, kind of emptied out our city. I never forget one time we were out on a tour for work, and we were driving through Northwest Baltimore where I grew up. I grew up in Pimlico. And we were driving through some of the neighborhoods near like Cinderella Shoe Store and Park Heights and Belvedere and a couple other streets. And I was just saying to myself, where did everybody go?
Yeah,
like when I grew up in this neighborhood, there were like people here, there was businesses here. But now, you know, having an understanding of what has shifted our neighborhoods and understanding that, you know, the city has really just not had a viable plan to rebuild our neighborhoods. It's not necessarily the congressman's fault. It is the fault of our city fathers, our elected officials. We're probably around the same age. I'm not going to make you old as me and Angie say we grew up together, but I'm a little older than Angie. And so I remember when Schaefer was mayor.
Yes.
And Schaefer, what do we remember most about Schaefer? In the harbor, the aquarium, him building up downtown. That was really the focus of the city leaders. Develop downtown. Let's develop downtown. But they never put any money back into developing these neighborhoods.
Correct.
Developing these homes. I was listening to a podcast that Morgan did. Maybe they did it last year or so. They interviewed Glenn Dowdy. Remember, Glenn Dowdy used to play for the Colts. His nickname was Shake and Bake, and he was the primary funder of what we know as the Baltimore Neighborhood Recreation Center, or Shake and Bake. Right. And he was talking about how when they went to the city to try to get the city to invest in building Shake and Bake, that they really initially did not want to do it because they were focusing all the tax incentives. They were taking all the federal money and they were spending it on building up downtown. They were not concerned about development in the neighborhoods. And I think that's what has happened to the city. The city basically ignored the Black neighborhoods and they focused on down.
There's a map that exists, and I'm quite sure Angie knows about this. It's the Black Butterfly.
Oh yeah, definitely.
A lot of people don't want to, that's like one of the red elephant in the room that people don't want to address. But it really,
so true.
It really exists. And the lack of investment. Now, if you look at Baltimore, let's look at the complete city. And I want to go back. I want to go back to your comment about the Inner Harbor.
Sure.
We're now having discussions about tearing down.
Isn't that something?
Less than 35 years later, we're now talking about tearing down Harbor Place.
Yeah. Malls are dead. That's what Harbor Place was, a mall.
Yeah. So
right.
So but however, the alternative, the replacement, we're talking about green space.
Right.
And that's what I couldn't understand.
Green space.
Well, the people that live downtown want green space. The people that live around there, white people,
okay.
they want green space. I told last,
but they don't clean up off the brick, Garland. I walk downtown every day, and they don't want to clean up. They don't even want to bring the bags to clean up off the brick. They want to leave it on the brick.
It don't make a difference. I taught community organizing class. If you want to know if your neighborhood is gentrifying, look for the following two things: dog park or bike lanes. Yep. If you got a bike lane coming through your hood, where it used to be Hoodie Hood, and you didn't ride no bike in the street,
facts.
And all of a sudden they took that, they knocked down all those vacants and they put a dog park there. Yeah,
Facts.
some other people that don't necessarily look like you are about to move into the neighborhood
Or already have
are
started.
already there. And so yeah, it's amazing. Now the focus is they're going to create this green space. They're going to make the harbor swimmable, and they're going to do all these other crazy things. You know, the mayor said put a Ferris wheel down there. I don't know if that's going to work. You know, make it an entertainment place, and but he wants to have boxing matches, so that's cool too. And so
Wait, now.
yeah, he wants to have boxing matches too. And so I don't know, but yeah, I think you know, the Western District, that Western area, and it's unfair to say this about Congressman Cummings because his district is so wide. I don't think a lot of people know the 7th District goes as far west as Carroll County. His district goes all the way almost to Mount Airy in Carroll County.
Yes.
And it goes all the way east to Edison Highway. He has a northern portion that's like almost to the line of Pennsylvania, like almost to York, Pennsylvania.
Well, that's now in court, you know,
Yeah.
the gerrymandering, you know.
Yeah, and that's gerrymandering. And it's so it's kind of unfair to say, oh, he hasn't done much. But I think that
But do they even really know, Garland, what his role is? See, that was the thing. When you made your comment in your
Yeah,
post,
I don't
some
think a lot of
don't even
people
really
because we
know.
think that, you know, he's the
he's been the picture of Baltimore alive.
right, and he's the federal, he's our elected representative at the federal level in the House of Representatives. That does not make him the mayor of West Baltimore.
Absolutely.
We have a mayor. We have an elected city council. As a matter of fact, I think about 4 or 5 council districts cover the western area. And so I was thinking the other day, like, man, in about 3 or 4 of those districts, we had people that was in office like 20, 25 years in those districts that never did anything.
I agree.
Those are the people we should be banging
Facts.
on. The local government and state government, because we can't leave the state government out of this as well.
Absolutely.
Federal money comes through the states, and the states then in turn spend it locally. They give it to local jurisdictions. I think about the Red Line. Red Line was something that ran through Congressman Cummings' district. Red Line was going to be this major transportation initiative. Baltimore, the state of Maryland has one of the worst public transportation systems in the country, particularly in Baltimore, where it's really based on keeping certain people within the city and not access to the county. You know, to go from West Baltimore to Southeast Baltimore, where a job is, which is normally a 20-minute trip by car, could take you an hour and a half.
But, you know, I have a little bit of unofficial experience when it comes to the Red Line. At Bentlow Elementary School, which is now named Mary Ann Winterling Elementary, is named after the former principal. And when Miss Winterling was the principal, she was hosting the community meetings to discuss the Red Line.
Okay.
And I was assigned to that area, and I used to work there, work overtime, and I was curious about this project called the Red Line. But one of the questions that I would listen to and hear from the residents was the underground portion of the Red Line that was going to go below Fremont Avenue.
Yeah, it's going to go below Fremont and go
underground,
underground and come out at Canton somewhere.
The concerns was the vibrations, and people did not want to move out of their homes.
Okay.
Because we had just built that new set of townhouses down by the old Lexington Terrace. So you had that group of people that would have been affected, and everybody along that corridor of Mulberry Street would have been affected.
Sure.
So those were questions that nobody was able to answer. And so although the project would have been great on the overall, the actual residents that lived there had many questions.
Sure.
And they kept raising many questions, and those concerns were valid because these people had purchased homes and saying, look, I understand you guys want to build, it's going to bring a lot of jobs, but how is this going to affect me and how I live and how I, you know, the things that are happening in my home.
Correct.
So those were realistic questions. And I get back to what we were talking about how communities have dropped. Councilman Burnett, he posted a documentary 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I had to reshare it on my page.
Okay.
His grandmother was a lady that was activist as it relates to the development over by Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
And those people in that community were people that had purchased their homes, had raised their families. They were there, they were living, they were thriving, and then all of a sudden, there was a big bully push to move everybody out of their homes.
Okay.
And when I watched the documentary, it was really, really to see some of the health conditions that people develop, and the demolitions was going on at 2:00 in the morning, and all of the things that people endured, where these were Baltimoreans that were uprooted. And so it gets back to the bigger picture that we're talking about, about how people left the city or were even forced to leave the city.
Correct.
There's, I give credit where credit is due. We have a lot of elected officials that are in office right now that actually care.
Yes.
And we can't take that away from them.
Absolutely, we cannot.
They actually care.
Absolutely.
And most notable, people, can say what they want. The mayor, the current mayor we have now, has a heart for the city.
Sure.
I've seen it. He is a man that cares about Baltimore.
Definitely.
But he needs that help and that support. The city council president is amazing. I watched him grow from, a community aide to city council president, but his district, he worked hard for his constituent services. So, both of those gentlemen deserve that promotion that they got when everything went down, and we needed strong leadership to be in place.
So, Garland and Clyde, what do you think happened to our communities that the people don't care anymore? Because we still have some of these same people living in some of these communities. We do have people like Brandon Scott, who, really worked hard in his community. And even since I've moved back into the city and I'm in his area, I've already, had my times of talking with him since I've been back in the city. So what went wrong? What turned? What were the dynamics that turned people from, I can't say they don't care, because we do still have people on the streets that do care, but those few homes that just don't care anymore. Like, they don't even care to keep the cleanness and all of that.
From a public safety perspective, we can look at the introduction of, the heroin and crack cocaine epidemic that took over the 1980s. I mean, that started the divide of family.
Okay.
And then when you started having people moving into public housing and moving into a place, there was a deal. The deal was you can have a place to live dirt cheap, but you can't have a man here. And so the breakdown of family, where the fathers were now out either strung out on drugs or out there selling the drugs, as opposed to going down to Bethlehem Steel to go to work. You remember in the 50s and 60s, I wasn't born, but those men went to work. If the my
grandfather was one, my uncle was one.
You can always find work in this town.
Absolutely.
That's how my family got here. My grandfather settled here to work.
Yeah, my grandfather too.
Sure. Definitely.
So when we started to break down in the 1970s and 1980s, when the jobs left, they introduced crack cocaine, and then we had this epidemic of either everyone selling it or they're using it. The family started to break down, and there's 6 points of social control that's out there, and that's family, religion, education, and the other 3 is courts, corrections, and police.
Okay.
So when you look at those dynamics, if you have the top 3 breakdown, and I'm a student of this, but I heard it broken down like this yesterday by a gentleman who I look up to, who actually put the 6 pillars in my head. And I watched him break down. If you have strong families, you have a strong education system and a strong faith-based system, then police, courts, and corrections don't even get involved. And that's fact. So that's one of the things that we're missing, is a strong faith-based system here in Baltimore. We need a strong educational system. Some of the things that we have, I mean, I watched another show host, and I couldn't help but agree with him. He said not one damn hearing was held on the lead and water in the Baltimore City school system.
I was talking about that this morning in the barbershop.
Not one. Not one hearing was held.
Right, we were talking about
nobody went to jail. Nobody was investigated. And so now we have, Fox 45 doing all these doggone
Project Baltimore,
but they're exposing our weaknesses as a city. They're exposing it.
Right.
And at some point we gotta address it and say, hey, you know what? We have failed, but we're going to fix it.
I think, in the echo, Clyde, you said it all. I think the echo what Clyde said, just to join on to that, we have broken communities. Baltimore is a devastated community. Clyde has already laid it out. We've lost our industrial base of jobs that were easy to get without high school diplomas. We've turned into a society now where you have to have multiple degrees to get jobs. And so with the brokenness financially in our communities, absence of banking and loan system, and the fact that we've lost so many residents, so many pillars of the community, there's no one there to train up the current generation of what it is to take care of a neighborhood, to take care of a block, build an association. Organizations out there that are trying to empower and build people to do that. But I think that's also a root cause, is that because our communities are broken, because we don't have strong community-based leadership that's actually leading the community and the government is accountable to them, then that opens up the community to these outside sources. It opens up the community to speculators. It opens up the community to apathy in City Hall and all of these other things. I think about how the Highway to Nowhere is a great example of this. Yes. The Highway to Nowhere was a highway project probably in the early 70s. The Baltimore City had received this federal money. A lot of cities were building what we call inner city expressways. And so they came up with an idea where they were going to connect I-70 to come through the city and connect to 95 to where the stadium is. And so if you ever drove 70 and you come to Cooks Lane and it stops right there, actually it's supposed to go through Lincoln Park and it was going to go all the way down Edmondson Avenue, basically follow where the red line was going to go. And what happened was the Route 40 part, which we call Highway to Nowhere, which is right exactly where you're talking about, where people in that neighborhood, as a matter of fact, our church was in that neighborhood in Saratoga and Fremont. They were not strong enough to organize people to fight against them tearing out that section of the neighborhood. Churches, businesses had to relocate, residents had to relocate out of that area. I had grandparents that lived where the Social Security building is on Green Street in Franklin. And so, almost 50,000 people were moved out of that area because the community was not strong enough to fight it. But down in the Fells Point area where one of the highways was going to go, you had Barbara Mikulski. This was kind of her claim to fame before she became a council person, then eventually going on to serve in the federal government and all. They were able to organize and fight that highway. And so it showed the different neighborhood and a strong neighborhood, a neighborhood where you have strong leadership. They're able to organize, they're able to train people, they're able to take control of what's going to happen in a community versus when you have a community that's broken.
So one of the things that we must look at, and we don't have a balance of government. Everybody agrees with everybody. There's no resistance.
Sure.
Is there because they're afraid
No,
to step back and fight against somebody, or they just want to get on the bandwagon because I'm getting on the bandwagon because Clyde knows what he's talking about. I'm listening to him.
No, it's Angela. You go move on this street, and you can run for city council, and then you go move on that street 2 blocks over, and you can run for state delegate. And so now I have control over the city council and the state delegate and the legislature. So it's been done over and over and over by many people. But if you look at it, Dr. Martin Luther King said, if we all agree that somebody's not needed, and everybody agrees on every level of government, and people can say that it's Baltimore suffered because of democratic rule. Well, we can look back to the fact that we've had democratic leadership since the 1960s. However, there was a balance of government. When Schaefer was mayor, he didn't necessarily agree with the Mitchell family wanted all the time, but they were able to have a conversation and sit down and work it out.
Absolutely.
And the Mitchells got what they want for the African American community over on the west side, and people in Canton got what they wanted from Mitchell. I mean, got what they wanted from Schaefer. And so there was a balance of government back there, and we need to get back to that because everyone's like-minded at this point, And if you don't agree with them, then you're wrong. You're just wrong.
But that's what I'm saying, Clyde. That's what I'm saying, Clyde. You get treated differently because you stepped to the plate. You said something. You disagreed, and so then you become the X. So it's like, don't nobody want to talk to you. Don't nobody want to.
Oh,
People want to. You're a sellout, right? But that doesn't mean that.
Right.
That doesn't mean that because you see things in a vision
That,
differently.
That reminds me about remember when they were having the 300 Men March?
Right.
The guy that organized it,
Munir
Bahar. He was kind of controversial because he was a person who said, okay, I want to work with the police. I'm going to work with these people. And a lot of the radical, I know I probably said it myself. I know we were talking about it in the barbershop, like, how you going to work with the man? How you going to work with the police? How you going to work with these people that have been exploiting us or hurting us and things like that? But his focus was, hey, you know, my goal is to change the community. My goal is to make things better, to make it safer, and we have to have partnerships. And so I think, you know, we have to kind of start working on breaking down these walls. But I think the first step, the most important step, is the community has to heal and take charge of itself first before it could go outside and begin to say, okay, let's work together.
Well, it all starts with accountability.
Sure.
And you know, yeah, do we have families that are broken? Yes. And I know a lot of successful people that came from broken families. So that's not an excuse or a crutch. I mean, you know, my neighborhood was okay growing up, but it wasn't the best. It wasn't,
Right.
You know, and I looked at people in Northeast Baltimore like they were rich, you know, because
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
coming from where we came from, it was kind of rough.
So,
you know?
Okay.
So you know, to see, and that was one of my dreams. Like, hey man, I want to get one of these houses on this side of town over by the
Right.
stadium, because
Right.
that was
Okay.
a place I had to catch the bus to, and it was a different reality.
Right.
And right now, we got to get our kids into the mindset that this sense of lawlessness is not fun. If we look at some of the things that are going on with the crime and violence, these are young 15 and 16-year-olds. We had what, in the last 7 days, we've had 6 or 7 juveniles shot. I mean,
Sure.
it's a sense of lawlessness because they're doing it for sport. You know, I listened to, you know, from time to time, once a month, I'll say, let me listen to 92Q for an hour straight to hear what our kids are listening to. Because in radio, they go on a continuous loop.
The same
It's the
thing
same
over and
thing. So
over.
if you hear
Same.
one, you'll be,
You can actually understand what they say in that mumble
You
rap?
don't know the words. You
well,
don't know the
what I do,
words.
and it's funny, if you go to my Facebook page, there was a song that was played. And I heard the hook, and I immediately went to Google, and I Googled the song, and I Googled the lyrics.
Sure.
And when I Googled the song and lyrics, I posted it to my page, and I said, this is the stuff that our kids are listening to.
Yes, you did.
But then you turn around and you go to the AM side, and you go to the other station, and I don't mean to promote Radio 1, but if you go to the other station, 10 a.m., knowledge is power. They're talking about politics and everything, current events. So you got two extremes. We're talking about the realistic things on the morning show and all throughout the day with the specialty shows, but then on the AM side, our kids are listening to garbage. But if you go a little bit further up the dial, then you got the grown and sexy music going on. So you know, and not to bag on that station, but like, we got to get control of what our kids are listening to.
Absolutely.
Look,
Absolutely.
Look,
Not just listening, watching, because they want to live the reality of what TV is. We were raised that TV is TV and it's not real most of the time. You know, that's how we were raised. These young people, the way these reality shows make them think that this is real life and this is how it is, and it's not.
Well, here's a fact, and I had this discussion with a pastor friend of mine. There's crime and violence all throughout the Bible.
Absolutely.
Crime and violence all throughout the Bible.
Read that word.
Crime, violence, and sex.
Right. And sex. And crime, violence, and sex is in the Bible. And they weren't all married.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of sins the same way that we're dealing with today. It's not like
So it's not
anything was
new.
different. It's nothing new.
Right. But we have to condition our kids that when, you know, you might live for a little bit, but you dead for a long time.
Sure.
And once you gone, you're gone.
Chris Rock said it. Chris Rock said, you know, people talk about life is short, and he said, no, life is long, especially when you make bad decisions. And so, life is long, and I agree with you. I think we have to, you know, change the narrative. We have to change the perceptions. You know, it does boil down to brokenness of family, poor self-esteem, those things. You know, I was talking with someone one day and they're talking about, we go out here, we buy these clothes, we do all these things. I said, well, you understand that if you've been told you ugly and you stink and you're not beautiful and everything about you and your culture is terrible, then yeah, you're going to do these things because you think that's what's going to make you beautiful. That's what's going to make you whole, but it's not. And so, yeah, we have to kind of reclaim these things and start kind of changing up the narrative. I want to ask you one thing, Clyde. I was just reading something recently. It was talking about investments into the recreation centers. And it was talking about how they were looking at some statistics where, the police budget has increased exponentially over the years, but investment in recreation centers and public schools are way behind. They were looking at crime around where the recreation centers were, and the fact that now there are less recreation centers now today than it was 10 years ago. Do you think recreation centers and other youth-based or focused activity would also help start to address the problem with crime and the problems that our youth face? Really, basically, they don't have anything to do in the community.
So to answer your question, kids that are 15, 16, 17 years old don't want to play bumper pool.
Sure.
And if they're going to play basketball, they don't necessarily need to go inside of a rec center to play basketball.
Right.
We have to do the things that are attracting them to come to the rec centers. I mean, under Mayor Pugh, her administration, she will open up the rec centers at nighttime for the nighttime curfew. I used to work the East Baltimore one over at Collington Square Elementary.
Yeah.
And it was, we would get there 10, 11 o'clock at night and stay till 5 in the morning. I mean, at one point, it was literally exhausting to sit there and not get a child for months.
Wow.
Because kids, you can't chase them. So the minute they see the curfew van is out, they take off running. And the police can't chase them. So, hey, nobody's, so kids were not volunteer. So we did have a group of kids that the grandmother would say, look, this is my time because mama's not here. And she would bring them up there. And at one point, we didn't even have to sign them in. We would just open the door, feed them, and play games with them and things like that. So, and the same thing was going on the West Side. When parents needed a break or grandparents needed a break from raising their kids, they brought them to the center and they got a few hours and they would come back and get them at a certain time. And I said that to say this: what are we going to do to attract kids to come to the rec centers? Because you know what? Right now, bumper pool's not fun.
Right.
Old PlayStation 3 is not fun when they can go in the house and play Xbox One. Or
right, you're gonna only play ping pong so many times.
Correct.
Foosball so many times.
So how we have to find the things that are attractive. And when we get into police budgets and things like that, there's a cost of keeping people safe.
Absolutely.
There's a cost associated with that. And I when there's an officer that has an allegation against them, and I will be remiss if I didn't share this. And if an officer has an allegation, the first thing the media wants to put up is the salary that the officer makes. And I think that's unfair. And let me tell you why. As a police officer, you come to work, you've already signed up to work the Orioles game. And that's tomorrow. But while at work, someone gets shot. Now you 2 hours into overtime at the hospital, waiting on the hospital to give you the clothes. Now you get the clothes of the victim and you go to the evidence control room, but there's 2 other shootings in the city, and now you're number 6 in the line.
Oh, Jesus.
So now you're 4 hours into overtime, and then you clock out. You go home, get refreshed, come back to work your shift, go work the Orioles game. So now you've already had the Orioles game, Ravens games, because if you look in Baltimore, every weekend there's a parade or a race. Some kind of 5K race.
Oh, my God. Don't go to Fellas Point. Don't go anywhere.
So there's always police needed, and we're short.
Absolutely.
We're short. So to say that an officer, based on an allegation, for whatever the allegation is, to imply that they somehow stole money because they worked overtime is wrong. And I think that it's poor journalism in some cases, in order to get that splash headline. But we've got to be smart on how we package when it comes to police budgets. How do we put it together?
But Clyde, will you be honest?
Sure.
trying to figure out how to put this. Yeah, and I agree, because I think there are some good, honest policemen that are doing honest, good work, and they're earning their overtime in a proper way. I mean, of course, we just saw with the gun trace task force, these guys were like tripling that's how they were lying. They basically were lying on that.
Those guys
were lying, and that was proven. And I think sometimes we have to, not that police don't work hard and that not that public safety is not needed. I think what we're seeing is a lack of out of the box innovative thinking of how to address the community problem. I think, and you may agree, you may not agree. I think, yes, it's respect for law enforcement, but also, it has to be some integration of community and rebuilding of trust and all those things. And I think that's probably a major thing that the city may never, I don't want to say never, maybe in our lifetimes, we may not ever see that, because there's so many issues that we won't really address of, the relationship between police and community, the good and the bad.
So it has to happen in order for the relationship to foster and grow and for trust to return. And one of those things that has to happen is the other side has to be willing to accept that.
Sure. Yeah.
And if we continue to say, it's just like a relationship. If the husband was cheating and the wife, he's trying to get back to the wife, no matter how much he danced with the kids, the wife still doesn't want to hear it. Right. So you can dance with the kids all you want. Sure. And so that's why, when we got all of these, the hot dog wagons and the cops running around dancing and lip sync challenge, that's great. But the people that are really heartbroken about that don't care about that. They don't care about an officer dancing with someone. So it's these type of conversations where, police have to, have realistic conversations and say, hey, you know what? We failed at some point.
Right.
We accept our responsibility, and now we're going to work to fix it. And those that do not want to get on this train, we want to make sure that they get out of this profession.
And I believe that's to be true. And absolutely. We had someone to say, Tiffany says, it has to start at home the most, and we have to build up our children mentally, emotionally, and financially. And that is very well true, Tiffany. But as Clyde was just saying, people are doing jobs. One of my former guests, Tanya Shelby wrote a book. I Am the Students I Teach. I believe that's the title of it. Don't quote me on it, but she wrote a book. And I could see that translating in a whole lot of careers, not just as a teacher. But there are people doing jobs because I gotta keep this job. My finances are predicated on this position. But honestly, are you doing our community a disservice by staying in a job that you really need to go home and choose a different career path because you are not effective as you should be or could be, because you don't like the job no more, but you got to do it because this is what you're making, or this is what you need to do because I'm used to making $80,000 a year. I can't find another job because either you got the job and it's a career that you didn't have a degree, so now you're making $80,000 to $100,000 a year, but you don't have no degree. So what's the likelihood of you being able to get a job making $80,000 to $100,000 a year, unless you do your own business and it's just that popular, that you will make that kind of money in another career? So you stuck in this career and you're unhappy. And so you're making your community unhappy. And not just, I'm not saying where you live, but the whole community, whatever your job is, whether you're a fireman, a police officer, a teacher, whomever, because you got teachers who are being teachers who really need to go ahead and retire and do something else, because you're not doing our students any justice by being angry because you got to come and deal with their foolishness every day. Don't get me wrong. I am not for no kid ever disrespecting a teacher. I'm a former teacher myself. And so for me, it was no nonsense in my classroom.
Sure.
And I was one of them kind of teachers. You punch me, I'm going to punch you back.
Right.
Not now, not now, not never one of my students would ever try me, but that's just the kind of teacher that I was. And I was younger. So guess what? I was really off the hook then compared to I would be today. I'd probably be a little more negotiable today than I was back then. But again, it's the respect. Because even when I was teaching, and I've told you, Clyde, even when I was teaching, it's a level of respect that you have with your students. So therefore, they are just not, and that's just how it is in every career. Some children are not going to come for you because of the respect that they have for you as an officer and the relationship that they've built with you, just like with me as a teacher and you as a social worker. When you were in that field, the people will respect you. But the moment that that respect is lost, you've lost that person. And that's just where I see people are today. If they don't respect you, they either do or they don't. And once they lost it, they done with you.
And I can't stress enough, and I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I'm gonna be very brief.
Mhm.
The hard work that the men and women of the Baltimore City School Police,
Mm-hmm.
the hard work that they do, it goes unnoticed. But the officers that I work with, I mean, it's really, really, really the model that should be followed throughout this country of the way that people are coaches, the way that our officers have been working since school let out in this camp, the School Police Initiative camp, the Great camp, the GEMS camp. It's officers all over around this city working with every different age group and every different demographic in camps.
Mm-hmm.
And they work with them every day and building that trust and building that relationship. And if people want to see some hard work, all you have to do is, go look on our chief has a Baltimore City School Police Facebook page. And he posts the stuff that our officers are doing every day with these kids. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start by building that foundation with those young people, because those young people are going to become our adults and they're our next leaders.
I think too, you raised a great point, Angie, about respect. And I'm blessed because my wife's a teacher and she's heading towards a retirement. Hi, honey. And my sister's a teacher and other teachers in my family and all. You have to have a special calling to be a teacher.
Absolutely.
Everyone cannot teach. And I think that's the thing that we're missing in a lot of our school systems. We don't have teachers who have that calling, that gift, that skill to work with students who are not the traditional students in our school systems anymore. And I think we need to train up and nurture those type of students. And then, teachers. And then also we have to do some healing around parents who have had bad educational experiences and they translate that to the child and they bring it to the school. I don't know how many stories my wife used to tell me of, confrontational parents, but she kind of had to get those parents kind of in order that, you understand that these parents, they had a bad school experience. And so their interaction is always confrontational. It's always a issue in terms of really supporting the teacher and supporting your child. Your teacher's not always lying on little Leroy.
Right.
And
they want to come up there and fight the teacher.
You want to come up and fight the teacher.
My God.
And so, we have to do some work around that. And I think also we got to do some work around understanding that, we have to learn how to communicate better between these systems. I think you just raised a great point. You got these school police, they're working with students, so they're not trying to create a adversarial relationship in terms of, they're showing themselves in a different light. They're communicating, they're talking, they're building relationship. I think a lot of times when people think of an interaction with police, I know as a 52-year-old man, if I see some lights behind me, I get very nervous. I'm 52. I ain't got no record. I've never, and I should not feel that way when I interact with law enforcement. And I think we kind of have to start working, like you said, kind of showing other examples and breaking down some of these barriers and all, because, we should not be, the police shouldn't be afraid of doing their job, and we shouldn't be afraid of interaction.
Well, we need, I said this 20 minutes ago, and it all goes back to accountability.
Sure.
If we can hold people accountable, look, if someone commits a violent crime against someone, we shouldn't be by having people. Why are we selling people free my man so and so t-shirts when we know he did it?
Free Scola?
Yeah. Well,
You want free Scola?
I'm not touching that. But why do we want to free people that did something? Let them serve their consequence. I mean, we
I'm
need
with you.
and we need to make sure that that's important to teach our kids that if you have, because right now we're setting them up and locally in Baltimore. Anything people think that it's legal to smoke weed in Baltimore when it's not. It's not legal to smoke weed.
Wow.
So it's not legal to possess weed. However, we have a state's attorney that is not prosecuting cases, but it doesn't make it illegal.
That's right.
It doesn't make it legal.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay.
now-
That's the difference.
But now, guess what we have?
But we
have
got
a whole-
dispensaries, so.
No, but we have a whole demographic of people that are not employable because they can't pass a piss test.
Absolutely. That's where I have the issue right there.
Yeah,
Clyde.
I mean,
So we're sending mixed messages. Let's explain why.
well, yeah, we got dispensaries now, though. So it's someone's making mainstream
it's an
society is
industry.
making money.
It's an
Yeah,
industry.
mainstream society is making money off
If
it.
I
Well,
had
we
the
got
money,
people that look like us that are in jail 10, 15 years for selling, bundles and whatnot. But now that it's legal in some aspect, now it's a multi-billion-dollar
It's
industry
right.
that they're making a killing off. As a matter of fact, it was a dispensary on the way up here, and all. And so, yeah, I do believe in some accountability. Yeah, and also we got to educate ourselves about the law. I forgot that. Yeah, she said she was not prosecuting the cases, but okay, so that don't mean.
But
you can
my
walk
thing
down the
is,
street and
but
smoke your
Garland,
blunt.
think about it though. We still now putting people, as Clyde just said, in a place where they still can't get a job.
Correct.
Because they're doing
Yeah.
these urine tests and they can't pass the urine test. And you're telling this young man, look, I need you need a job, but I need you to stop doing this. What, for 30 days, they say? They got to stay off of it for 30 days. So a friend of mine's nephew want to lay around, talking about he can't find no job, won't nobody hire him. Well, every time he gets these jobs, but when he goes and do the urine analysis test, he ends up not getting the job because he still has, matter of fact, he done probably did it right before he went to go get the test done. Or he didn't do it that night. Well, the last couple times he said he didn't do it the night before. So he waited 2 days. But it takes 30 days for it to come. They say that's
True,
what they say.
you got to clean out yourself. I mean, like Stephen A. Smith said, get off the weed.
Norma said,
Get off
Garland,
the
you
weed.
said a mouthful right there. Whatever you were talking about at that
About the
point. But she
teachers.
said many people are there for a paycheck. And I think she's talking about school
Yeah,
teachers.
about the
Many people
teachers.
are there for a paycheck and the summer's off, not for the investment of the student's future. And that is facts, Norma, all day long. People do not want to be held accountable and do what it takes as an instructional person, as a teacher,
Can I push back a little bit?
Okay.
Being in schools and watching some of our teachers interact.
There are some teachers that
they
do.
deserve that break they get.
Oh, and I'm not against people to get the break. Trust and believe. Trust and believe. I didn't work at all. I didn't do no summer school. I worked hard all year long. But again, you don't have all those teachers that are putting in their time, though. Some people, I have girlfriends that call me who venting because they administration now. So they venting about these teachers who either they don't want to come to school or they're at school and their interaction with the students and not being held accountable for their paperwork and
it's not
all.
a 9
It's
to
not.
5
I'm
job.
not. It's not a 9 to 5 job. I know when I was teaching, I worked multiple jobs still. And trust and believe, you put in your time. I was at my classroom. My kids could always bank in my classroom. I was there at 6:30 in the morning because my school started at 7 something. So like 7:10, I think it was. So it's by 6:30, I'm sitting at my desk doing whatever. But I done stayed late the night before, making sure everything is ready for that morning. So when I'm there at 6:30, that's either somebody coming and getting some extra work or just if you needed to come in.
So we're still.
But all teachers are not that way.
Every conversation that we've had focuses around one of the 6 areas that we talked
Oh,
about.
absolutely.
It talks about family. It talks about education. It talks about the faith base. It talks about courts. It talks about corrections. It talks
Mhm.
about police.
How can we get
Well-
back to mentoring families though? Because I believe families need to be mentored, not just the student, not just the children, but I think parents, because the parents are different. I know a girlfriend who told me years ago, over 20 years ago, she told me, I will never be like my mother and them and raise my children. But then look at your son right now.
But
It's a proven fact that you
But you
didn't
have
raise that child like you, because look at what he's doing and look at where you are.
but you have a 15-year-old bringing their 1-year-old to school to the daycare,
Mm-hmm.
and their
Oh, Lord.
32-year-old mother is at home trying to work to provide for her grandchild and her 15-year-old, while the
Correct.
47-year-old grandmother
Mm-hmm.
is out there trying to provide a home for her 30-year-old mother with a 15-year-old child that has a 1-year-old. And that's the
Mhm.
reality of our city.
I
It's
think we
not
could- mhm.
a broad, a lot of people in that situation,
But it's
that's
quite a few.
That's quite a few people that are trying to deal with that. On
Yeah,
a daily
I think we
basis.
have to prop up and well, first thing we have to understand is that there are different things that make up a family. A lot of times we try to push people to our vision of what a family is.
Correct.
Husband, wife, 2 kids, whatever. In today's society, that's not what family is. Family could be the auntie that's raising the niece and the nephew,
Correct.
or
Correct.
the grandmother that's taking care of the whole family. And so I think we kind of have to shift our paradigm to kind of think of that family is not traditional in the sense that maybe we experienced it, and then try to give the best supports and things that we can do to help those families be whole. I think one of the things we need to do that we're not necessarily seeing in our city is, people need better jobs. We need better wage paying jobs for that you're half of our families, they're working hard to try to keep the family together to make ends meet, where they can't invest a lot of time in parenting because they're working. Baltimore City, I think the Associated Black Charities, they put out a report last year where they were saying that over 50% of African Americans in Baltimore City are working in the lowest wage paying jobs. And so we need to create employment opportunities where people are getting health benefits, leave days, different things like that, where they can actually invest time into being good parents and being good stewards of their family and being good stewards of the community. And in a lot of situations, we don't have that. I'm fortunate enough, me and my wife were professionals. We have multiple degrees. We were able to put our children in the extracurricular activities. I could take a leave day and go up to the school, or I can do these particular things that some families just can't do, because it's not that they're lazy, it's that they got to work.
Right.
they've got to be
Facts.
at work. They've got to work those hours, because if they don't work those hours, then they're going to hurt financially to pay rent, to have food on the table, all of those particular things. And so I think that's why we see a rash of siblings raising the other siblings and things like that. And so I think if we start to think broadly like that, maybe we can start to see some movement.
But it goes back to the initial discussion about political people in political office.
Mm-hmm.
Every year that is an election, the year leading up to election, they talk about jobs.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to bring jobs, and jobs and education. That's the platform. Jobs, education, and criminal justice is the platform for every
Right. For
politician.
every one of them.
Jobs, education, criminal justice.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know what? We find ourselves locally with being embarrassed by, Project Baltimore for the shortcomings that we have within our education system. We find ourselves locally given, this person who is elected to serve over top of the free world, ammunition to say, like the report today on my way here, I read a tweet from the White House that talks about how Baltimore is more dangerous than the cities that the immigrants are fleeing from.
Yes. He
And
said
I'm like,
fleeing from
Guatemala
and all them places. Yes, he did say that. He tweeted that. Absolutely. He did tweet that.
But my question is, let's look at some numbers. Let's look at statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can't have a statistics-driven society,
Mhm.
which we have had, going back to the O'Malley days with Comstat and things
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
That's what was driving police. The job that police did, and it was based off statistics. We have to think about holistic approaches to some of this stuff because, I'll never forget in 2013, my former coworker and friend ran for sheriff of Baltimore,
Mhm.
and he looked at crime and violence back in
Donovan?
2013. Yeah, Donovan.
Yeah, that's my
So
man. We went to
Donovan-
high school together.
Donovan came up with this. We were sitting in a think tank in my office, and we were talking. He was like, "Man, I'm telling you, this is all about. This is a public health crisis," and that was his platform. He was telling people 2012 through 2013 about how it was a public health crisis, why everybody needed to be at the table.
Mhm.
And if you look at any other community or any other jurisdiction, if we had 5 or 6 juveniles shot in 1 week, the lines will be out the door at that emergency city council meeting in
Sure.
any other jurisdiction.
Sure.
But you know what? That's acceptable behavior here in Baltimore. And why? Why is it acceptable? Why
That's
is it
my
wrong?
whole point. Why people feel that it's okay to allow these crimes to continue on, and we're not out here fighting and trying to get to the root
You
of
really
it.
think people think it's okay? I don't think people think it's okay.
People just tune it out at this point.
Yeah, I think people were numb. I think people are numb to it.
Right. That's
But
what
I don't think people think that, that it's okay to take lives and that these lives don't matter. I think we're at a point of despair in these cities where people just don't see what's going to help. It goes back to what we've been saying. I think the overall theme is, okay, where is our critical thinkers? Where are these elected officials that we're putting into office to kind of put these things in place to address these things? And we're not necessarily getting anything out of it. And because our communities are so broken, there's nobody there in the community that we can take and even just build our own thing, to build it up ourselves. And so I always kind of flinch when I hear people say people don't care. I think people really do care. I think there's
I don't think that they
organizations
don't
out
care,
there.
Garland, but I just think that we need to hold these officials accountable
It's
as
officials,
well.
it's residents. I
Well.
think it's a whole bunch of accountability. But the order to make somebody accountable, they have to be present. And I don't think we have those critical pieces present in the community to implement any type of accountability. You're accountable for what you hear. That's what they teach us in church, is that, there's an accountability once you learn the word or you hear the word or a particular thing, you're accountable for that. You can't say you didn't hear it.
Well,
and so I think in the sense of the community that we don't have the critical pieces, and in government, we're not having the critical leadership that we can put some accountability in place.
So I pose this question to both of you, and I know I'm not the host, but I have a question.
No, you do your thing. That's why we're here together.
Let's say that the White House found $200 billion.
Okay.
$200 billion. Let's say $1 trillion.
Sure.
And they're going to give it to Baltimore tomorrow. What's going to be done with it?
We've been talking about that in the office. I don't know. Like,
what are we going to do? Because you know what? And secondly,
I think a strategic group of people need to come together. We
continue
can't
to throw money at everything.
I
because
think,
that's the drum
issue
right now. Let's look at the lockbox. We need to fund education, fully fund, money. How much money we're going to throw at the problem before we do an evaluation of what we're doing with the money that we currently have?
I think we have to overhaul our systems and really get some critical people in place and systems in place that will work for everybody. I think, like, I agree with you. Throwing money is not going to solve an issue unless you put some sweat equity to it, unless you have some, as we call, skin in the game, in terms of you're invested in the outcome. It takes me back to one of the early things we were talking about when we were talking about the lack, why are people leaving the city. At this point in time, I don't know what the city's plan is to bring residents back to the city other than to live in areas that is not in Canton, Patterson Park, Charles Village, or Harbor East. Well, I don't live in the city, but what is the city's plan to build up these black butterfly neighborhoods?
Well, I believe that there's a plan, and let me tell you why. When you go from New York to DC, you have Philadelphia and Baltimore in between. Baltimore is a port town. And I think that maybe 20 years from now, people that work in DC are going to live in Baltimore when we have that train that can cut the travel down.
Yeah, they're already coming up because it's cheaper to live.
It's cheaper to live here.
Absolutely.
It's cheaper to live here than live in
Absolutely.
Prince George's or Montgomery County.
Absolutely.
You can come here, you can get yourself a place down in
I
Canton.
know people that commute every day.
Right. And so I think that you're going to have most of the people, and it's almost how most of the people that work in Manhattan live in New Jersey. And it's a short ride. So we might have, 295's, it's undergone a little bit of a facelift with some of the potholes and fixing some of the things down there. But once we get once 95, 295, 97, 50, and the train get to a point where it can handle a lot of people, you're going to see that mass exodus of people moving up from Washington, D.C. or moving from the surrounding counties into Baltimore City. They're going to have city life and city resources, and the economy and the community will start to thrive again. But a part of that problem is we still have people that are here, and where are they going to go?
Well, you have people now that are still migrating in different areas. Well, they're making, where Section 8 seemed to at one time just be in the city. Well, now you have a lot of these areas. You got Carroll County, you got Columbia. Those are areas that are now really accepting those Section 8 tenants, young and old, because I know some old people who have moved out. And so they're migrating them into these communities in the county. So that leaves room for people who are coming in, as both of you stated earlier, that when you start seeing the change of complexion in a community, that it's some gentrification starting, some changes are coming. And so when you look at that whole corridor down there on Wolf Street and all of down there, now they got the signs, $300,000 townhomes.
Yeah, but that's different though.
And they're going to be coming. They're going to be coming. The other cultures and races, because it's not just Caucasians. There's all different cultures and races that are coming in. So then you're moving them into, now you're moving them to the county, because as they said, some of the crimes that, of course, we don't hear about because Baltimore County and Columbia kind of keeps their crimes under wraps as much as they can.
No, they don't, because we had 2 shootings in Howard County. We had a guy that was banging on someone's door at 3:00 in the morning, and the homeowner shot him. Last week, we had a triple shooting in Essex, and they made an arrest yesterday. The thing is, those jurisdictions are not playing with these people.
Correct.
They're not playing. They're going to hold them accountable.
Absolutely.
And their new address, once they're caught, will be Roxbury Road out in Hagerstown. They're going to jail. These communities, you're not walking from a jury of your peers in those jurisdictions when you got evidence stacked against you. Unfortunately, in the city of Baltimore, it's a dice roll. And defense attorneys are telling people, man, just take a jury trial. We'll just say that the cop lied and the cop planted the gun, and you know what? You'll get off.
But it's sad.
And that's why, because people don't trust the police, right? Well, it's more of a question than a statement.
Well, but why? But why?
Because I think
why?
we can't ignore that, it's been decades of bad policing. I think it's been decades of bad policing.
But what about when they go to court, Garland? When they go to court in the city, they do the same crime in Baltimore City as they do in Baltimore County. Why can a person do the same crime in Baltimore City and do the same crime in Baltimore County, and you get time? Now, mind you, the crime requires time for the city and the county, but the city will give them probation.
Correct.
And the county will give them time.
Well, I mean, I would say maybe it's, and I'm just guessing, maybe it's, the overcrowding of prison system. Maybe it's
Why can't they send those criminals to
because
places
and also
that have availability? If we can't keep them in the city jails, then
there is there's a financial now. I think what we're starting to see, well, this is my guess, and from what I'm reading, is that now we're starting to see that you're getting this probation, and you got to pay for monitoring, and you got to pay for the bracelet on your foot,
right,
and all those things. I think it's tied into a financial system where the state does get some type of compensation from the charging of the crime. They may not get incarceration because I think we're in a system where we're trying to the system's trying to get out of mass incarceration. But my original question, and I wanted to go back to this. Okay, you talked about the incentives of people coming to live like around Johns Hopkins Hospital, around the institutions and stuff like that, and they're giving people a good amount of money to do those things. Johns Hopkins, they offer a lot of money for incentives to people to buy houses around their institutions, in addition to money you can get from the city for closing costs. But how are we going to get people to buy into Pimlico, or buy into Lower Park Heights, or buy into North and Milton, or those other very gay street, those very challenged neighborhoods? That's where I want to see the city's plan. Those other areas around those institutions, they're going to take care of themselves, because the institution, they're happy that those places are gentrifying because they can bring in staff that works for their universities, for their institutions, and their dream is to populate the areas around their institutions with their workers. But now we have to start thinking about, okay, what about these other neighborhoods where it's blocks of vacants? How are we going to get somebody to come and move to these neighborhoods?
Well, because there's two Baltimores, and a lot of people don't want to accept the fact that there's a different Baltimore in Roland Park than there is in Harlem Park.
Oh, most definitely.
And we try to get away from that. What's acceptable on Roland and Cold Spring is not going to be acceptable. I mean, what's not acceptable on Roland and Cold Spring is acceptable on Harlem and Emerson.
Okay.
Emerson and Cary.
Right.
Sure.
That is, that's where we have to draw the line and get tight on setting what's going to be the minimum standard and sticking to what the minimum standard of things that are acceptable.
So you think if we took that facility that's at the bottom here at North Avenue and Gay, because I ride by it every morning, and it's
rough around there.
It's major in the morning.
Yeah.
It's major.
Yeah.
Now you go by there late night, it's not that bad out there.
It's
like they clear out.
It's probably
they
cleared out about now.
It's cleared out about now.
But everybody's going to
But I can assure you, by 6 tomorrow morning,
it's tight.
It's tight. And my thing is, look at that community. Look at right there. And that's where we're going to be on this weekend, down on Milton and North Avenue. But that's what I'm talking about, is right there at Gay and North Avenue. And those people, like I tell anybody, don't nobody want to be a drug addict. I don't believe nobody desires to be a drug addict. And when you sit at that red light and you watch what goes on, and I got drug addicts in my family, and I've been around all of it, so it's not like it's new to me. But when you sit there and you watch these people, can't nobody tell me somebody really want to be like this. And when you look at that facility and what it draws at 6 o'clock in the morning, all day, when I come back through to come here in the evening at 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's that same crowd, if not more.
Sure.
But at 6 in the morning, it is massive. Like, you would think that they are literally giving away food bags or something at a food pantry, and they're not.
But they're giving away something.
They're giving away something
that gets people by.
That gets them by, right?
And you don't, and again, that's looking at, and I think that we need to look at the drug market, the war on drugs.
The mental health illness, all of that ties together.
But there is a nexus between the fact that, and it's true that the African American population make up the majority of the people that are affected by the criminal justice system, and we have to change that. But how do we change that? You know, we got to start by educating, starting in middle school, starting in elementary school.
We got to start in the homes, though, and we got to start with our communities.
We can't get into people's homes.
We can't get in their homes, but we have to start in the community. We got to bring a community awareness. We got to start some kind of way that we can help heal inside the community. It's not just doing it in the schools, because again, we're only tapping into that child. But if we're not tapping into that parent, I'm gonna tell you, as a former teacher, when I had a good control on the parent, once I had a good relationship with that parent, that student was a much better student the rest of my year with that student. Once I had a good niche on them, I had them. And so therefore the parent was in agreement with me. The student knew I didn't play. And it was just a no. And the kids who were in foster care, because I had some kids who were in foster care who did not have a parent per se. They were living in a household. So we have to change the dynamics. We have to get into these communities and try to start healing the community as a whole.
But let's look at it from a different standard. Expectations and accountability at home. I have somebody that will remain nameless that works in the school system that posted a picture of this kid with like these Gucci shoes on. And the kid said, "This is all I got, because I know I'm not graduating, but I'm at the prom." And that was and for that kid, that was
a highlight.
Yeah, that was the highlight, but that was the end of the road.
But like, you got parents that put all this money out for a prom, but don't have no money to send them to college. I got a problem with that.
The cookouts and the streaming backgrounds.
When did the prom become like a wedding?
It's a whole experience.
What happened with that?
It's a whole experience.
It's a whole different
When I left for the prom, my mother say, "See you later. Don't be out late." Wasn't nobody there to take no pictures. Wasn't no chicken wings.
Look,
when did the prom become a wedding?
A DJ backdrops. Now you got a step and repeat behind it.
Not only a step, when you shut down, and look, God bless the young lady that owns that business over there, because she's doing, God bless her. When you land a helicopter, when you fly your date in the Mondawmin on a helicopter, that changed the game for me.
Man.
They shut down Mondawmin, shut down the parking lot, and the dude came in the helicopter.
For the prom?
For the prom. But see, again, the dynamics, the value system, all of that is all out of place, because where is that child now? Are they in college? Are they?
From what I hear, that kid's exceptionally bright.
Okay.
Going off to school.
Okay, well, that's just one of the few, because then you got some kids who can't even finish high school. When somebody just told me recently the child failed 10th grade 4 times, I got a problem with that. Why aren't we doing something about this child who's failed the 10th grade 4 times? Come on.
It goes back to the reason why we're both sitting here. Project Baltimore again. God dang it. I hate to
okay, so then can we hire somebody? Can we hire
No,
somebody to help?
Listen to this. They had 13 schools with high schools with 0 kids proficient.
Right.
6 and 6 of those schools.
Facts.
6 of those schools was in the district, in District 7.
Yeah.
That's exposing the things that we as a community are accepting. We gotta say, no, that's unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Who's going to be held accountable for that?
Absolutely.
Why is my child? Look, if my child goes to school and they're failing, and I'll get them a tutor, and they're still not getting it, then I had the right setting for them.
Let me ask this question now. It's because we're coming up on an election. I think is next year the election for city?
Next year.
And so, everybody's been talking about we need new blood now. We need new blood. We don't need the current mayor. We don't need Jack Young anymore. We need new blood. These people have been in here forever. I mean, what should people be doing right now to prepare politically to identify the people for the future? Because I think this is a very, very critical election, because you're going to have not only the office of the mayor, but you're going to have the city council president open. You might have some other major districts at play. This is a critical time to get new blood or the right blood. As city residents, what do you think the residents should be doing to prepare for
First of all, wait a minute. First, they need to know what their roles are. That's what needs to happen first, Garland. People need to know what the roles of each person in our system and what they do and and when you're looking at candidates, knowing what they're qualified to do or not qualified to do, because everybody who just want to say, I want to run for mayor, shouldn't just be running for mayor. You should have some type of credentials behind you, that qualification to be able to say that, not just because you've been in the city forever, because you're popular, because you're friends with so and so. We don't need that anymore. We've been dealing with that too long.
So there's an old saying that I live by: when you're in your own lane. And let me explain what I'm. I love my mother to death. I love my mother with every beat of my heart. But my mother was to call me that she's running for mayor tomorrow. I'm going to be honest with her and tell her I don't want you to do it. I don't think that that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
And secondly, when we have people that are in office, I always start with this mindset: if someone's running against someone, I got to evaluate the person that's already in office, because they've already been there. And the one thing that every incumbent has is a voting record. What did they vote on? On the issues that matter to you, where did they stand? Who voted for one trash day a week? Let's look at it. Who voted on this? Where did they stand on these votes? And if you break down where they stand on the issues, then you'll say, you know what? I'm going to go a different way. And I had to do that. When you look at down ballot races, most people only focus on, the big races, the mayor, city council, and some people don't even vote down ballot. But it's important to know who your sheriff is. It's important to know who your comptroller is. You can't just continue to vote on names. It's important to know who your register of wills is, and their role and what they do.
Not just who they are, but what they do, because that's where the problem is. And that's why with Garland, when he wrote what he wrote, saying about the role of Congressman Cummings, he was fact on that. It was like, do you really know what his role is? He is not the governor or the mayor here. Granted, he does make a difference in the community, but he's not the one we need to be coming for. Even though we know that it was stemmed behind something a lot bigger than this.
For me, I can't get caught up on what's going on in Cecil County with their county or Harford County. I can't get caught up what's going on in their jurisdiction if my own jurisdiction is a mess.
True.
And that's and we've seen these congressional hearings on steroids in baseball. And I'm like, well, what the hell has that got to do with us? We've seen congressional hearings for everything. And you know what? Here's a fact, and I just got yelled at by my aunt on Facebook. She's telling my mother, Tanya, I know you're gonna tell my mother. But here's the fact: we had 8 years of the Obama presidency, and we've had all of these different years of all this crime and violence. And President Obama said some of the same stuff about our city, called people that participate in the riots thugs and criminals. And we accepted that. Bernie Sanders stood up in Sandtown and walked down the street and said, this is a third world country. That was in 2015. It's 2019.
Correct.
What has changed? It's gotten worse. It's worse.
Right.
So that's my thing. We can't give them folk any kind of ammunition in order for them to play with.
But we need to be able to make these changes. Now, right now, we got all these people now because they want to clean up. We want to do these incentives. Well, let's continue to clean up even after this die off, because things only last around for a little while. So next week this time we ain't gonna be thinking about what Trump said, because he'll be gonna say something else stupid out his mouth. But again,
somebody else will be the target.
Somebody else will be the target. But again, community, don't let this be the reason that you got to now clean up. Continue it. Don't let it just be this week.
I think though, and we also need to do the work to find out who's already doing the work in the community.
Correct.
There are a lot of people that are already doing the work, that need the funding support, that need the volunteer support, that we're not propping up. We're quick to prop up these people who show up after it's all done, or they show up for a limited amount of time.
Correct.
But there are people who've been there that have been doing the work, that we don't necessarily support. We don't get the money to these people. And so I think we need to start identifying the people who are doing the work and help them expand the work. I think there's a great organization in the City Leaders of A Beautiful Struggle. One of the things that they did was they refused to take foundation money because they didn't want to be held accountable by foundations for work that they were already doing.
I think you should look
in the
into
community.
And let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
The work that those guys do are hard of gold for the people that they support.
Right.
However, I've given both of them, the two gentlemen in charge of that, I've given them business cards and asked them to sit down and meet.
Sure.
They don't want to meet with me. And you know what they've done? We had a town hall meeting about the school police officers. What they do? They propped up some of their people, and they sat in the NAACP meeting that we had, that I was invited to, and all they did was attack. And I'm somebody that looks like them. That's trying to do the right thing in this city, and all they did was attack and say, you know what, I shouldn't be. They don't listen to him because he's the police. He's with them. So you know what? How are you benefiting? How are you trying to bring people together when you're keeping the divide? Because you know what? If the divide doesn't stay there, then there's no need for you to be around. So we got to keep that wall up. And you know what? God bless those guys for what they're doing and what they're advocating for. But I think that you should look a little deeper and see where they get their funding from. That's all I'll say about that.
Okay.
And connect the dots. And you know,
I know the mayor appointed one of them to kind of coordinate the youth fund and all those.
Well,
things.
youth fund is being appointed by is being overseen by Associated Black Charities.
But Associated Black Charities is doing the bookkeeping of it.
So,
but Adam Jackson, who's one of the leaders of LBS, I think they are kind of like I won't call it a program officer, but they are the people that are coordinating.
But you know
the
what?
application.
Again, I'll say this. You know, that guy, him and the other gentleman, Davon, they work hard. I get it.
Sure.
But for their
and yeah, I mean, they're not necessarily
because,
loved by everybody, and I understand.
Yeah, but just because they're good at one thing, look, if somebody came to me, if people would look at me funny if the mayor said to me, I want to appoint you fire chief tomorrow. I don't know a damn thing about putting out a fire.
Sure.
So there's no traffic in your own lane. And why do they need to be?
Right. I brought them up as an example. Maybe another example. Like, what about Job Opportunities Task Force?
Great.
There are other people out here that are
great. They are excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. You
there are other people out here that are doing the work. And so I was just using them as an example.
No, and I get it. And look, Nicole Mundell and Corinne, they are excellent. They're exactly what our city needs, because they're advocating for a different group of people that need someone to advocate for.
Yes.
And you know what? The one thing I love about Corinne, she is not afraid to have a conversation across the table with someone else that does not necessarily agree with her.
Sure.
And that's what we need to get to, a point where we're having courageous conversations. Look, we got Val Jenkins and her group that Hug Don't Shoot. She's out there
hustling all of that,
all
the time, every day.
Ceasefire,
absolutely,
doing their thing.
Absolutely. But we got to come together, because and join in. There's a lot of organizations doing all their own separate things, but I think we need to, and some of them have little small stuff going on. But I think if some of these organizations came together, because from what I've talked to several men who've been on my other show, and they've all made mention, we need more male participation. We need more men to be involved. And my thing is, okay, what can we do to be an incentive to get these men to help us with these?
The problem. The problem is we have a meeting to talk about what we talked about at the last meeting, to talk about what we talked about at that meeting.
Sure.
We keep having all these meetings and nothing's being done. And we got a lot of people, that are pontificating, and they standing in front. People want to be seen in a crowd.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I said it, and I got a little fire for it. But I said, it's too many 5. It's too many. It's not enough Indians. We need people that want to do the work.
Absolutely.
And
it's work.
I'm humble. enough as an individual. I'm humble enough to say, you know what? It's your turn. It's your chance. How can I support you? If you're out there and you're doing the work, how can I support you? How can I look? Joel Gamble and the Joel Gamble Foundation. That boy left Carver High School, where I was a student, and I graduated. He's about 4 years younger than me. Went and played for the Cleveland Browns. Went and played in the Arena Football League. He came back to Baltimore, and when he was trying to get brooms and things like that, just to clean up the community, to start off his foundation, he was having a hard time. And you know what? He's brought every NFL player that is a part of that NFL Alumni Association into Matthew A. Henson School Number 29 gym, and had them giving these kids hope when they had the draft. These are the kind of grassroots organizations that we need to give support. And you know what? Most of his coaches, people won't know this, most of the people that coach those kids in flag football, they're police officers. They're cops. They're cops. They're the same cops that people don't want to trust, but they take their time and they go out and they work with these kids, and these kids get to see a different side of them.
And also, I'm on the board of a great organization, Mentoring Mentors. Alfonso Mayo, he's an excellent young man. He came out of a great support program out of the Center for Urban Families. And he's been doing a fantastic job of mentoring not only males, but females. And he's been doing some critical work in West Baltimore. So, yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of grassroots organizations, and I think that's where we need to start. Enough with the meetings, because what I realized when I worked in the nonprofit realm is that you have professional meters. They make money off of going to meetings. That's their job. They'll go to 10 meetings a day, and that's their thing. They're professional meeting people, but not often do we have the people at the table that are actually doing the work, that are actually boots on the ground. And we need to have the people that are boots. And a lot of times they're not at the table because they're working, because they're actually doing the work.
Well, here's another
and so we need to connect better with the people work.
And Clyde, let me voice one person's opinion. A guy named Bruce Oliver said, we do not have an economic base. No base, no solving the problem.
Yeah, we definitely said that earlier.
Patches on it, and that's true. We've been talking about that, Bruce. You kind of maybe just joined in with us, but we did mention that. But you're right on.
We need better jobs.
Well, there's an old saying: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Oh wow!
Absolutely, that's facts right there. That's facts all day. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and that's the truth.
So I think that we have. All right. So getting back to the fact that while we came here, we talked about the fact that someone let's just say hypothetically, if you want to call someone a racist, let's say all right, they are racist, but and I read this today, and it struck me on a guy named Tristan's Facebook page. He said, if I'm drowning in a river and a Klansman has a rope, am I not going to grab the rope and come to safety because he's racist? Am I not going to accept the help?
Some people would do that though, Clyde. I've seen a couple movies like that where, because you have situations like that. What about the person who got a kidney, and the person that can save them with that kidney is a black person, but because of that, and so therefore we have to look at all of that.
Are you a member of the Nation of Islam?
I mean, it happens. It literally happens, and we have to face the reality of that there are still some people out here who are like that. We have to face that reality, but we also have to look at the fact that people have to look at this holistically, as you've said, Clyde, in some words you've said as well, Garland. We have to look at this holistically, everything, and not just we can't just keep blaming the politicians. We can't keep blaming all of these other people. There are people can be mad all you want. There are some truths to the things that person in the White House did say. The person that we have, not all of us, but some people elected, or however he got in office, there was some truth to those things. The thing
There
is
was
now
no truth to those things.
there were some truths to some of the things that he said.
You don't believe
we
that
just need,
Baltimore has a crime and
I mean, we know
rodent
that Baltimore has a crime and
right,
a rodent issue.
but we need to
what I'm
address
saying
them
is
and fix them.
his truth was he blamed Elijah Cummings.
No, I'm not saying
And
that.
no,
I'm not saying that.
and the implication was that because he's used this before, and someone on CNN had brought this out, guy who grew up in that area, was saying that whenever he talks about black people and black communities, he uses the
word
term infestation,
Mhm.
crime ridden.
And I saw
and
last
it's an
night.
application of, it's an implication that black people are, and where black people live is high crime, there's rodents, and that's a lie.
I saw a
That's
clip
true.
last night from C-SPAN where Congressman Cummings himself said that
Yeah, I
he
saw.
left
We were talking about
a
that.
crime
We were talking-
infested.
We don't know
neighborhood.
But
where
that
that
was
clip.
20 years
Yeah,
ago.
that was 20 years.
Okay.
We don't know
And
where
again,
that clip
it was
came
a clipping, but we
Was
don't
it-
even.
was it a
But we did you see the
testimony?
whole view
Yeah,
of
did we
it?
see the whole
So
thing?
hold up. It was 20 years ago.
Mhm.
But what has been done in the meantime since
I mean,
1999?
So we could have
what
gone back and got a clip from 1969 and said the same thing about Baltimore, and it's still true today. I mean,
what has
I-
been done?
I
What has been done?
think things. I mean, as a
Don't-
law
and-
enforcement agent, I think you could probably say that there's some things that have been done. Not all of them have been effective.
Right.
I mean, hey, let's go back to Mr. Martin O'Malley, who I think was the worst thing to ever happen for Baltimore City, and the zero tolerance policy that he implemented, pretty much, and that really set the city back. That's really one of the foundational issues in terms of lack of community police trust was under his administration.
But
they went crazy with his thing was, I'm going to bring these murders down. So I mean, I think I guess what I'm saying is there's been attempts. Have all those attempts been successful? No.
But they are
But-
philosophies. Zero tolerance is a philosophy. It's a philosophy. Is you got broken windows, you got all these different
I know
police
about
philosophies
broken windows
that are out there. However,
because broken windows is the foundation. Zero tolerance comes out of broken windows.
so with these police philosophies, there are groups that set standards. They go around to different cities and they set standards as it relates to how policing is to be done in urban cities.
That's how we got crime stat.
But these are the facts, and these politicians buy into these ideas, and there's a lot of money that is tied into that. I'm
Almost
not going to go
definitely.
down too deep in the woods about that.
I mean,
but
come
then-
on, this foundation was paying for a secret plane flying over the city. So yeah, keep on going.
So with that, these different theories is to the victor goes the spoils. When you win an election, when you are the public liaison for Lawrence Bell, who was the city council president, and he allowed you or told you to go into churches like Bethel AME and other places, and the whole time you were secretly running for mayor yourself, and then you just pop out of the blue and have the vote split by the African American community between
Sure.
Lawrence Bell and somebody else, and you emerge as the victor. You get to now put your philosophy. It's no secret that from that day he had his eyes on the White House, and the only way to do that was to be hard and tough on crime. And part of that thinking, because if you look at it, he was in that group of people. It was the Clinton's crime bill. Clinton's crime bill arrested more black people than any other president in the history of this country,
Yeah,
but
but
we
we-
put him up on a pedestal.
We claim he was black.
But we put him on a pedestal. We do not.
Our black president.
Yeah, and more people went to jail than any other president in this nation's history under that bill.
Yeah,
and this was the same blueprint that was being followed from 100 Holiday Street down to Annapolis, and they were trying to take it down.
And
to,
black people wanted it too. Middle class blacks. We wanted it too because we wanted the streets to be safe.
Right. We wanted
And
wanted to
then
be
once
different.
everybody started being arrested and put into jail, and we start to see that it was
There was no discrimination on the middle class and all of that.
A
So
whole bunch
therefore,
of inequality in the
right.
system of it. Then people start to pull back and say we need reform.
Right.
So I think we need to. I think that my counterpart in the city police FOP, he put out a statement the other day that I strongly support, because we can't start with a crime plan. If you look at it, I mean, look at the crime plan. God bless the decision that was made by the city
Harrison.
council to bring in a gifted police leader. I mean, God's gifted. He knows policing, but do we think that we didn't have? I'm still a stickler that we had great minds here that we could have tapped into. That there are people that are around.
But do you think it was a situation? Wasn't that it wasn't the great minds the issue? I believe that it was more so because of the infiltration of not trusting who was some of those individuals.
Baltimore County didn't care when they just hired Chief Melissa Hyatt.
Right. I'll tell you what it is.
Annapolis didn't care when they just hired Edward Jackson, who was one of the greatest minds in policing in this area. They didn't care. Because we as a city were conditioned by this media play that the police were bad and all of them are corrupt. And that's false.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying all of them.
I got the answer for you, and it's a quote. Just like Clyde, you had a couple quotes. I got a quote for you. What do we call an expert?
It's a good question.
Someone from out of town.
Yeah.
That's the answer. An expert is someone from out of town.
Wow.
And so that's always been Baltimore's view of an expert. The answer is not here. The answer is out of town. What someone
so
else
that's
is.
when we have a business.
Yeah.
And I'll go by from that person, but you have the better quality.
He just explained it, like when we were talking about the zero tolerance and the broken windows. That was a concept that was developed by sociologists in Boston. Then they took it to New York, and they took it to these other cities, and they start selling it as a plan. And these are what the experts say that works. And so I agree with you. We never look internally for the answer. We always look externally for the answer. We always look out because we believe that the expert is not here in our midst. The expert is somewhere else, and they need to bring what they have or what they've done there and bring it here.
I look at coaching. That's one of the things I have a background in coaching.
Okay.
And I've had teams that were that had the most talent, and I've had teams with the least amount of talent.
Okay.
You could have put Phil Jackson, who was, or Greg Popovich, either one, or two of the
Great coaches,
and had them coach the Golden State Warriors last year.
Okay.
And neither one of them could have gotten the Golden State Warriors over the hump to beat the Toronto Raptors. It was just their time. The Raptors were just that good. They were gelling at the right time. One of the great stories is my close friend. He was the coach at Forest Park, and when I tell this story, it really it's interesting. He won one regular season game at Forest Park, and at that time they qualified for the playoffs.
Okay.
They qualified for the playoffs as a 16 seed, 1A state champions in 1999.
Okay.
But it doesn't talk about that one win throughout the season. But it was a great coach that brought that team together at the right time. So being a police leader is just like being a coach.
Right.
Your people have to believe in what you're saying. And right now, the pulse that I get from police officers on the street and all of the jurisdictions, the pulse that is we have to be compliant to the consent decree first. Compliant to the consent decree first before we do anything else.
Okay.
So where is the priority for stopping violent crime? Because right now, the focus is on the consent decree. And that's the fact. So when do we have to, and you know what? Baltimore entered into this agreement. And now you have an agreement with the Department of Justice that's being overseen by a judge, and the judge is going to ensure that it's overseen. It's done because we entered into this agreement. I've been preaching it since 2015. That was a mistake. To handcuff a police department that had great people. We didn't know at that time that the Gun Trade Task Force, those guys existed, but Somebody knew that they existed because somebody kept signing off.
Somebody knew.
But if you look at history, as
Signing
long as you
time
put
sheets.
dope and guns on the table,
Right.
people didn't care.
Right.
But we need to hold those people accountable. Those people are no longer working here. They're gone. They're gone off the greener pastures. And we're left to suffer because we actually care. And our city deserves the best.
Absolutely.
We deserve the best. And it should not be the norm that our text messages are going off every night with shot spotter technology that there's gunfire in a city, in an urban city. And we got to accept that reality that it's not all peaches and cream, that we do have our challenges. No, we're not a bad place. Everywhere I go, I wear something Baltimore when I'm out of town. That's just, I love my city. You know, I got a few hats from Eric Randall. Be more like us. I
That's
wear
right.
t-shirts and sweatshirts.
Whenever he gonna get me my shirt one of these
Whenever
days.
I'm out of town. Like, shout out to Eric.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Shout out to Eric. He's doing major things. Him and Mike Floyd and all of them and Focus Kerm. I love those brothers. They just doing their thing, and I appreciate all three of them for coming on the
I need to
shows
get
at
you a
times.
Save a Dope Boy
So
t-shirt.
you know,
I was just joking.
I call it Hug a Thug, but okay.
but it's so true, and we just, you know, we
I
just
would say
gotta
this.
we gotta work together.
Yeah, I want to raise this, and I hear what you're saying, Clyde. I think that we have to allow a space for healing.
Yes.
The police want to just, okay, we were found these bad things. We got this consent decree. All right, they did it. Let's just forget it. We got rid of the people. Let's move on.
No, that's not.
I think may not be you, but I think a lot of law enforcement view it that way. Like, okay, hey, that was in the past. You always hear this. It was a few bad apples, and these bad apples are gone. But it's going to take some time to heal from those bad apples. Those bad apples did a lot of damage. And we can't expect that damage to go away. It's like being abused in an abusive relationship, and then the spouse comes and says, well, you know, I love you. I know I hit you in the past, but don't worry about that.
I have a question for you.
I'm changed now.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
First of all, this is me as an individual that says the sentences that were received by the Gun Trace Task Force are too light. I think that they should spend the rest of their lives behind bars for the crimes and things that they did to the
I
community.
agree with you.
But let me ask you this realistic question. Do you believe that everyone that they encountered was innocent?
It's not a thing if they were innocent.
I'm saying if
even criminals have rights.
I totally agree with you.
You have due process.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
I think the issue is that
I totally agree with that statement.
Yeah, now, you know, were they riding dirty some of these times when they caught these people? Yeah. But according
It still
to
doesn't
law,
justify.
It doesn't justify.
It doesn't justify.
Do your do your police work and do it. If you do it right, then you get your end result.
They were not doing police work. They were doing criminal
Yeah,
work.
they
veiled in police work.
Yeah,
so they
were
were
basically
criminals.
robbing people.
Those guys were criminals.
Yeah.
They didn't set out to go out there and mean the public any good.
Yeah,
they
they
set
were
out to
trained in
mean
day in real life.
Correct. So I don't think that represents the overwhelming majority or even a percentage of the police officers that still exist.
I would agree with that.
I don't think.
I agree with
and
that.
so just because they did wrong, I think that no, we shouldn't just pick up and move on. We have to understand. We have to understand the history. You know, the future belongs to those that see it coming. We have to understand the past before we can move forward.
Sure. I agree with it, but like I said, I think we give time and space for healing of that relationship. I mean, and it wasn't
You're speaking
just
of healing of the community and the police.
the police, yeah, and it's not just the Gun Trace Task Force. I mean, I know you mentioned something about the media portrayal of the police. I know the Sun, maybe about 2 years ago, they did a series on the abuse of the police. I won't call it police violence. The abuse cases where, like the police, they arrested someone, excessive force. Thank you. And how the city settles, and you have to sign this non-disclosure and everything, and you know those particular things that happen. I mean, and you had it happening multiple times, sometimes the same officer, and the city's paying out millions of dollars to settle these suits.
Well,
So what I'm saying is, it's not just those guys, the gun trace task force, they were thieves, but I think, you also have another history of ill feeling where people have had bad experience, and I think it's going to take a minute for that to heal. But I agree with you.
But when there's police interaction and a police officer gets physical, when you reach out and put your hands on someone, there's a good chance, there's a 50% chance that one of you are going to get hurt.
Sure.
And just because someone was injured in a police encounter doesn't mean that the officer maliciously meant to harm them.
Correct.
And so that's why most of the time police departments and cities, they sue because there's insurance for that, for people getting hurt. That's not the overarching plan, because if that was the plan, there would have been a criminal case to go along with it.
Okay, so Clyde, then what about the situation with now just think if the situation was a little bit different with the deputy commissioner when him and his wife was attacked, and then the gentleman who was a tech or whatever for the police department was attacked. What if they all had guns and when they got attacked, they in turn shot these individuals?
Well, in the state of Maryland, we have a duty to retreat law. You don't have a stand your ground in the state of Maryland. So if you can run away from your attacker, you're supposed to run away and get away and create space. But if you have no other means but to defend yourself, then you can do so. Law enforcement officers can only discharge their weapon in defense of themselves or others. And that's on duty. There's no warning shots. There's no, let's shoot the tires out. That's TV.
Right.
That stuff doesn't exist.
How come they'll never shoot them in the thigh like they do on TV?
No, that does not exist. Your training is to shoot to incapacitate. At the time you make
shoot
that
to
decision.
kill.
No, it's not shoot to kill.
I'm sorry.
It's shoot to incapacitate. And
I apologize.
When you have made that decision to move your finger into that trigger well and to pull that, it is the mindset. You don't just shoot to shoot. You're accountable for every round that comes out, and whatever's on the other side of that weapon, you're meaning to stop it. And so you have, and look, people think when people get shot that they fall up in the air and into a bunch
it
of
ain't a
trash
movie.
cans.
Right. It ain't the movie.
People have been shot multiple times and continue to fight. So you shoot to incapacitate. There is a reason that a police officer has made that determination or that decision to fire that weapon, and they are responsible for that. But it has to be in defense of themselves or in defense of someone else.
Right. So in saying that, when you have a gentleman who had his own business, I believe he has his own business as well, but he was a security guard, shot a robber.
The gentleman in Washington, D.C.
In D.C. They don't want him now to have his license anymore to be able to carry or anything.
Correct.
But he was defending.
No, he was violating the law. He was illegally carrying a firearm that and look, he didn't have a registered security company. And the reason why Washington, D.C. will not recertify him is because he had applied for a security clearance. However, he wasn't granted or approved at that time, but he was advertising and running a business as though he was a security company, and he didn't have a license to carry the firearm. And so, yeah, what he did was a good thing. That's why the state's attorney down there did not prosecute him and send him to jail. However, he was wrong. He was, he had no other choice but to shoot and kill the guy who had a gun to his head. So I think they weighed that and say, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You shouldn't go to jail for this, but we're not going to let you run a security company either because you were violating the law when you did this.
Okay, so then again, we go back, and I know you said that we're not supposed to be able to, we're only supposed to defend ourselves.
DC and Maryland is two separate.
I know, but I'm saying, so we're back here in Maryland talking about the gentleman who was kicked and beat in the head. What if he had pulled, when he tried to run away from those kids from beating him? What if he pulled out? Like, he didn't pull out his gun immediately, but he eventually, because they stomping him in the head now, he then pulls out his gun and he begins to shoot at them. And one gets shot, one gets killed. He is not shooting to kill them, but because he's down on the ground and he shoots up and he hits this person. At this point, now we're going to have a parent saying that this child, oh, he was such a good kid, but you got on camera, this child stomping this man in the head. How do we handle a situation like that?
Well, we had one about 3 years ago in Carroll Park on Monroe and Washington Boulevard, right there by Carroll Park. You had a group of 3 or 4 teenagers that were 13, 14 years old run up to a guy that was sitting at the stoplight with a gun that turned out to be a BB gun. They pointed the gun at this man's head. He tells them to I guess let me unbuckle my seatbelt or whatever. And he reached in. He was a retired police officer. He'd been retired
Oh,
for
I
like
remember
20
that.
years.
Yes,
He
I was
pulled his
thinking sound
gun
familiar.
and just started discharging. And he shot and killed one of these kids, a 14-year-old kid. And everybody looked at it, was like, well, he was justified because he had no out. He didn't have a way out. If and conventional mindset will tell you if you try to pull off, they're going to shoot into that car. So you have nowhere to go.
And you don't know if that gun is real or not at the time.
You have no way. And if you go to Walmart or any of these other
I've seen
businesses
them.
and look at these BB guns that these kids carry, they're realistic. I mean, there was a situation that I had, over 10 years ago, where I saw a situation and I just could not get a good backdrop. But the guy literally had a gun up to someone's head at Mondawmin Mall in the parking lot. And he was joking with them and playing with them. But still, in my world, you're still a 16-year-old kid. You're not able to carry a gun. And when I got to him, it was a BB gun. It was a BB gun. He was like, Boatwright, I wasn't playing. I don't carry no real gun. It's a BB gun. And I'm thinking like.
But you could be dead behind this
Right,
BB gun.
right.
Like another cop could have seen him. You knew this child,
I'm
but
yelling
another
I'm
cop.
yelling at him by his name to drop it. And he dropped it because I knew his name. He was like, oh, it's a BB gun, Boatwright. I don't care. Put it down.
But what if you weren't Boatwright? What if it was that other cop who would have seen him first and just told him put it down? And then he was like, it's a BB gun. But before he don't, it could have been a whole lot of different ways that could have gone.
So, yeah. So I to answer your question, it's unfortunate that, these people that have come to Baltimore to make a home and to try to help our police department grow, have been subject to violence. That's an unfortunate thing. No one should be in, and I'm glad that they're okay. I'm glad that the wife wasn't. But at the time, we were sitting at 186 homicides, and they could have been 187 and 189 and 188.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were sitting at 186 at that time, and I was thinking to myself, like, wow, like some people didn't get the opportunity to give up their wallet,
Sure.
and go home. And what is attracting these young people to think that it's okay to do that? Why are they attracted to that? Why, the big thing when I was growing up, when I was
It's a
teenager,
control thing. Don't you think it's a control
No,
thing?
the big thing. Well, when I was growing up, it was stolen cars. The New Jersey Drive. You
Right.
remember that?
I remember.
But it ain't
New
easy to
Jersey
steal
Drive.
no car now. So it's because it's so hard to steal cars.
Yeah, you.
It's
kinda need a
hard.
key with a chip.
It's really hard to steal a car now.
Oh, they got a way around it. That's why we still have an auto theft task force from the region, because people steal cars.
Okay.
They're still doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Are they still robbing banks? Because there's hardly any banks.
well, you do have some
Yes.
people who are.
I went
You
into the
do.
bank the other day, and the tellers are somewhere hidden away. I had to go to a camera
Yeah.
and get the money
Get
and
the
whatnot.
phone and
It
all
ain't
that
the-
kind of
you
stuff.
know, yeah, this ain't what's the movie that Ice Cube's son was in just recently? That's a good movie
Oh
too.
yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, they going in robbing the bank. That type of bank don't exist anymore. You just can't
Yeah,
go hop over the counter.
you do still have some. I mean, I can't say it's so much here in Baltimore, but we do have people who are still robbing banks.
Wow.
In the
Interesting.
city, they don't have a lot of the camera.
I think the police have a
places.
difficult job. I think we don't respect that enough. And also, like I said, I think that not all cops are bad cops.
No, they're not.
It'd be wrong to say that.
Well,
Let me ask you this, and I don't know how much time we got left, Angie.
We overtime, but we good.
Oh Lord. What do you think the responsibility of a fellow officer is to expose bad apples?
I think anytime that someone violates another person ethically or morally, and if it borders or if it crosses the line of criminal, you have a responsibility to report that.
Do you think it's being done enough? Do you think there is a culture that supports that, or you think it's a culture that says, "Hey, I'm going to turn and look the other way because I'm concerned about my own self-preservation"?
Well, you can't be concerned about your own preservation because here's the mindset. If you tell
And I mean, this
the
professionally.
No. Yeah. So there's no police commander that I've ever encountered that'll say, "Oh, you turned in a bad cop, so
Sure.
doesn't exist," or at least that's not realistic to me.
Well, the movies show that though. They because
so
sometimes
I guess
those
it has to be
high
true.
officials,
Right.
their high officials will be right in tune with
That
them.
happened in Baltimore. It was a guy. He turned in somebody, and they like put a rat in his patrol car and stuff.
Right.
So,
Remember that?
I remember the situation, but my
can't say
obligations,
nothing
I
about that.
can't get
Okay,
into
I'm sorry.
the weeds with that. However, giving you a hypothetical situation, there is a understanding that if you do something that is wrong to someone in my presence, you're not going to get away with that. So that expectation should be in the way that you carry yourself and things like that. And I look at it like this, and I try to answer this question before. When they say, "Oh, well, why are good cops turning in bad cops?" Well, did you ever think that bad cops don't do things in front of good cops because they know what the result's going to be?
Absolutely.
I mean, it was obvious
Not
on the-
intentionally
Yeah,
anyway.
It was obvious on the gun trace task force because it was one good cop there that they did not do the bad things in front of.
And you know what? In reference to that, I'll just say this: that whole investigation only became an investigation because of what? A good cop.
A good cop, yeah.
So.
Well, gentlemen, I must say this has been truly fun and
This was
enlightening and learning all at the same time. I hope those
Me
of
and
you
Clyde
who
should just have a show where we come back once
absolutely
a month
see,
and talk about some issues.
that's what I'm talking about.
There you go.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you guys. I truly appreciate both of you coming on.
Definitely.
We didn't really get into all of the roles of each one of the political or politicians, the political arena, the politicians, but as we move forward, and this is just an enlightenment, as we move forward into this season of election that's coming up in 2020, I would implore you to go and find out what each office in Maryland, statewide, citywide, nationally, what their roles are. Because I'm really sure that a lot of people are really confused about what their roles are and who is being shifted and blamed for different stuff. And we got to stop doing that. We need to come to the table knowing what we're talking about, knowing what we're listening to, and knowing how to vote. And you're saying we need a new facelift here in Baltimore and Maryland, all of that good stuff. Then in order for that to happen, we have to enlighten ourselves by going into our communities, learning about the community. And I'm not talking about where you live as the community. I'm talking about the community as a whole in the state of Maryland and Baltimore City and as a world. United States, because I can't speak for the world, but I'm speaking for the United States. That's the community I'm speaking of. We need to enlighten ourselves. So as you continue to decide on who you're going to vote for in 2020, take the time to learn, not just learn about the role, but learn about the individual and what they're doing, how they really do qualify to be in the position. We got to stop picking people because they're popular, picking people because we know their name, or, oh, they look nice, they dress nice. Honestly, that's not a reason to vote. And we had a lot of people that died for us to be able to have voting rights. So for those who did not vote this last presidential election and did not vote the last gubernatorial and the gubernatorial prior to that, and the mayor elections and all of that, when you give up your right to vote, you're doing your community a disservice. So I would suggest to you, take advantage of the fact that we have the right to vote, because it's not something I take lightly. And that was because I was taught that in my household. I was taught that when I was in school, because they were still teaching that when we were in school. They don't teach it as much now, unfortunately, but in our history classes, we were taught about voting and the importance of voting. So I would encourage you to make sure that you take the time to learn what you need to learn in order to vote in 2020. Don't be one of those people that want to run your mouth but don't have a vote nowhere saying you voted for or against. Because I'd rather you vote one way or the other. But when you don't vote at all, I don't want to hear nothing because you have no voice at that point to me. So, again, I thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you learned something just as I've learned some things tonight. And I hope that you will join us again here on Hot Topics. We will have them back again because this was fun and enjoyable and learning all at the same time. So I hope again that you will join us at some point in time. And we always have good topics. It's on Hot Topics Live. We just like to have fun and learn. Like I said, we like to learn, teach, and have fun all at the same time. Gentlemen, would you like to share anything with the community before we close out the show?
Well,
Go ahead, Clyde. Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to say the overwhelming majority, and I want to say that the overwhelming majority, I had to say it twice, police officers that I encountered and that I have encountered over the last 19 years, they're out there trying to do the best they can within the rules and regulations that they have to follow. These people mean well. These people make decisions on a daily basis that affect life and death. I just think back to the two officers that came up on that multiple shooting down on Baltimore Street where the 4-year-old girl was shot, and they made that determination that we can't wait for a medic. They threw her in the car and they took her right to the hospital. So it's officers like that,
Wow.
or one of the officers that at some point somewhere this week had administered Narcan or have done CPR on someone. These officers go out there with the care. When you hear on the radio officer saying, make sure we get a medic here as soon as possible, tourniquet has been applied, they're going out trying to save lives. So when you see these officers out there, just understand that there's a lot of stress, but they're here to help. And we need to go back to being the guardians and not the warriors. And that's a step that we are going to take one by one with changing the whole face of law enforcement. And there was a time in this country that our men and women came back from Vietnam and were hated. And we went through a cycle where we celebrate every chance we get. We celebrate the men and women of the military. We're going to get back to now where we have our officers opposed to having buckets of water thrown on them and things like that. We've lost society with some of these things that are happening, but I think that eventually things are going to balance out and we're going to get back to loving each other again.
Awesome.
And I would just say that, I think the change that we want to see is in us. I think Baltimore is a great city. I think it has great residents. I think it has people who care about their communities. And I think that the change that we want to see, it's inside of that single mother who's trying to pull it together, that aunt, that uncle, that school teacher, that elected official, that police officer. The change is there in the community. And I think if we start to look internally within ourselves and realize that we have the power to make that change, that the power rests in us, and if we start to activate that power, then we'll start to see change in the community. Wait until 2020 to start things rolling and to elect people. We can start the work now. We can bring people together now. We don't have to wait until we get federal funds that may never come or may never be effectively used. We can start to do those things now. And so the change that we need, I remember when Obama had that was his theme change, and it was kind of corny, but it rings true. Any community that's ever changed, this devastated community that's ever changed, it changed from the people. It did not change because of outside forces. It changed when people in the community decided to say, enough's enough, and we're going to take control of our destiny. And so I think for not only West Baltimore, East Baltimore, all the entire city, the entire state, wherever we're facing some challenges, if we begin to hold on to that the change that we have or that we want is inside of us, then we'll start to see the change at a local level.
I want to thank you guys once again. Join us on Saturday for Hands Across Baltimore. My corner is North Avenue in Milton. I hope to see you there. We need you to come out. Don't talk about what we need to change. Be about the change. Be a part of the change. Make a difference. It doesn't have to be where you live. No, I don't live at North Avenue in Milton, but I don't live far from there. And so I believe we need to make a difference in our community. And the only way we can do that is if we show up and show out that this can happen. So again, I hope you can join us on Saturday. It's only for 1 hour from 6 until 7 o'clock. And we're going to have a prayer. And then we're going to go on out into the community in which we, go, when I say community, just go on out into the community ourselves and do what we need to do to make a difference in our city, in our state, not just our city, not just Baltimore City, but also in our state, because we have to make a difference all the way around. So don't think because we live in a city, only us city people. We want you county people to come and support us in standing with us on Saturday. It's only for 1 hour from 6 until 7, Hands Across Baltimore. Let's stop the shootings. And we have to work together. A family that prays together stays together. Always remember that. So we are a family. And just as some people said, you can't talk about Baltimore if you're not from Baltimore. So, we can talk about Baltimore, but you can't. Well, guess what?
Talk about Baltimore.
We got to talk about
Baltimore
Baltimore
out your
in a
mouth.
positive way. And we got to do the positive thing to change Baltimore. And that's working together, whether we live in the city or we don't live in the city. I love you, but know that God loves you better than I ever can. See here for Baltimore Flavor Gospel, and then I'll see you again on next Thursday for Hot Topics Live. Thank you very much and have a great and wonderful evening. So we're going to take a picture.